Before Caitlin Clark scored a single point in the WNBA, before she faced a professional defender, before she proved she could handle the league's physicality, she had already won. Not on the court, in the boardrooms. State Farm, Nike, Wilson, Gatorade. The biggest brands in America were in a bidding war for a college player who had never proven anything at the professional level. And the sports world is still trying to figure out how she pulled it off. Here's what nobody wants to talk about. Caitlin Clark didn't just sign endorsement deals. She rewrote the entire rulebook for how athletes build value. She turned the traditional path completely upside down. For decades, the formula was simple. You prove yourself professionally first, then the money follows. Championship rings, MVP awards, years of consistent performance. That's what opened the vault. Clark looked at that playbook and said, "I'm not waiting." She became a marketing phenomenon while still wearing an Iowa jersey, and in doing so, she created a blueprint that terrifies traditional sports executives and excites every college athlete watching. Let's filter out the noise and focus on what actually happened here. Because if you've been following along, you already know something didn't add up. Many of you have been saying this for weeks. How does a college player command that kind of corporate attention? What did she understand about modern marketing that billion-dollar sports franchises somehow missed? If you believe the story behind the story matters, smash that like button. It tells us we're on the right track. Because what we're about to unpack goes way deeper than feel-good commercials and catchy phrases. The stakes here are massive. We're not just talking about one athlete's success. We're talking about a fundamental shift in how sports marketing works. If Caitlin Clark proved you can build maximum brand value before professional achievement, what does that mean for the WNBA? What does it mean for player development? What happens when the next generation decides they'd rather focus on viral moments and social media presence than perfecting their game? Reading between the lines reveals something the league doesn't want to address. Clark's commercial dominance before stepping on a WNBA court created an uncomfortable reality. She had more leverage, more media attention, more corporate backing than veterans who had been grinding in the league for years. Players who had won championships, earned all-star selections, carried teams through grueling seasons. And they watched a rookie walk in with more endorsement money than most of them would see in their entire careers. That's not just unprecedented, that's destabilizing. But here's where it gets interesting. The first domino fell in a way that caught everyone off guard. State Farm, an insurance company, not Nike, not a sports drink brand, not an athletic apparel giant. An insurance company saw what the entire sports industry had somehow missed. They signed Caitlin Clark while she was still in college, made her the first NCAA athlete, male or female, to appear in one of their national commercials. Think about the risk calculation there. This was completely uncharted territory. The NIL landscape had just opened up. Companies were testing the waters cautiously, signing small regional deals, playing it safe. State Farm looked at a 22-year-old with zero professional experience and said, "We're going all in." What made them so confident? Sources close to the negotiations suggest it wasn't about basketball stats. It was about something far more valuable: connection. Caitlin Clark had already built an audience that treated her like she was one of them. She wasn't polished. She wasn't media trained. When she talked about being that little Iowa girl who dreamed big, it didn't sound like a script. It sounded real, because it was real. And that authenticity became the foundation of everything that followed. The commercial itself became a cultural moment. The "from the logo to us" line didn't just trend, it became how fans talked about her game. Kids recreated it. Social media exploded with edits. Marketing departments spend millions trying to manufacture that kind of organic engagement. Clark generated it without even trying. State Farm had accidentally created a catchphrase that would define her public image. But that was just the opening move. Then came Nike, and this is where the story gets absolutely wild. Nike hadn't run a Super Bowl commercial in 27 years. 27 years of silence on the biggest advertising stage in the world, where a 30-second spot costs more than most companies spend on marketing in an entire year. When they finally decided to return, they had every option available. Proven superstars, global icons, athletes with decades of commercial success. They chose a 22-year-old from Iowa who had never played a professional game. Let that sink in. Nike's first Super Bowl commercial in nearly 3 decades, and they handed it to someone who hadn't proven she could handle WNBA defenders. That decision tells you everything you need to know about what Clark represents to corporate America. They didn't need safety. They needed momentum. They needed someone who could cut through the noise of a Super Bowl broadcast where viewers are bombarded with spectacle after spectacle. Connecting the dots reveals something fascinating. Nike wasn't betting on Caitlin Clark, the basketball player. They were betting on Caitlin Clark, the cultural force. Her appeal transcended basketball. Her story, the small-town kid with impossible dreams who outworked everyone, resonated with people who had never watched a women's basketball game in their lives. That's the difference between an athlete who sells products and an athlete who creates movements. The commercial itself was brilliant in its simplicity. No flashy effects, no celebrity cameos, just Caitlin Clark, a basketball, and a voice that sounded like she was talking to a friend rather than performing for cameras. Most athletes have to be coached through every second of a shoot. She just showed up and delivered. Natural, confident, completely herself, and the industry noticed. Wilson came next. A company that had been making basketballs for nearly a century decided that a 22-year-old had something to teach them about their own product. They created their first ever female athlete signature collection, not a generic endorsement. A co-designed product line built around her specific input. Then Gatorade, not just an endorsement deal. A recovery-focused product launch built around her training methods. Custom formulation. Her name attached to innovation rather than just existing products. You were onto something when you noticed the pattern. Each deal represented a company doing something they had never done before. Each partnership pushed boundaries. Each announcement forced the sports marketing industry to recalibrate what they thought was possible for a college athlete. But here's what the feel-good stories aren't telling you. While Caitlin Clark was collecting unprecedented endorsements, WNBA veterans were watching. Players who had spent years building the league. Players who had sacrificed financial security to keep women's professional basketball alive during the lean years. Players who had earned their respect the traditional way. And they saw a rookie about to walk into the league with more corporate power than all of them combined. Drop a comment right now. What do you think happens when someone rewrites the rules this dramatically? Does it elevate everyone? Or does it create a two-tier system where marketing potential matters more than basketball skill? Because that's the conversation the league is avoiding, and it's the one that matters most. Let's talk about what made Caitlin Clark's commercial success so unprecedented, because this wasn't just about getting endorsements. It was about understanding something fundamental that the entire sports industry had somehow missed. 3 factors converged at exactly the right moment, and she was positioned perfectly to capitalize on all of them. First, natural camera presence. Most athletes are stiff in commercials. They recite lines. They hold up products. Everyone pretends it feels natural when it clearly doesn't. Clark did something different. She was funny, dry, perfectly, effortlessly herself. The State Farm commercials felt like watching a friend make a joke, not a celebrity reading a script. That authenticity is impossible to fake, and it's what made her commercials shareable rather than forgettable. Second, emotional narrative. Her story transcends basketball. The small-town kid who sacrificed everything, who missed prom because she had somewhere more important to be, who launched three-pointers from distances coaches tell players never to attempt, and made them with a confidence that looked reckless until you realized it was certainty. Anyone who has ever wanted something badly enough to give up other things for it can see themselves in that journey. That emotional resonance is what transforms a commercial from forgettable to unforgettable. Third, cultural movement. When Clark does something, fans don't just watch. They recreate it. They share it. They turn it into memes and trends that spread across platforms without any corporate push. Brands spend billions trying to manufacture that kind of organic engagement, and they almost always fail. She generates it naturally, just by being herself. That's the difference between an athlete who sells products and an athlete who creates moments. Now here's where the story gets complicated. Because while corporate America was celebrating their brilliant marketing decisions, tensions were building inside the WNBA, not officially confirmed. But the breadcrumbs lead to an uncomfortable reality. Veteran players were frustrated. They'd spent years building the league's foundation, playing in front of small crowds, taking overseas contracts to make ends meet, fighting for media coverage that rarely came. And then Caitlin Clark arrived with endorsement deals worth more than some of them had earned in their entire careers. Before playing a single professional minute, multiple sources are whispering about locker room dynamics that first season, about established players who felt the media attention was disproportionate, about frustration that one player's arrival seemed to matter more than everything they'd built. The league desperately needed Clark's star power to drive growth, but that same star power created resentment among players who felt their contributions were being erased. This is the part of the story that doesn't make it into the commercials, the part where unprecedented success creates unprecedented friction. Let's be clear about what Caitlin Clark accomplished in the marketing world, because the records she broke are staggering. First NCAA athlete, male or female, to appear in a national State Farm commercial. First woman to headline Nike's Super Bowl return after 27 years. First female athlete to co-design a Wilson signature collection. First Gatorade athlete with a custom recovery product line built around her training methods. These aren't incremental achievements. These are transformations. Each deal represented a company deciding to do something they had never done before, because Caitlin Clark made them believe it was worth the risk. And every deal pushed the entire landscape of women's sports forward, whether other players wanted to admit it or not. But here's what makes this story so fascinating. Clark didn't just succeed in traditional sports marketing, she proved that the old model was broken. The traditional path said, you earn your commercial value through professional achievement, championships, MVP awards, years of grinding. Clark demonstrated that in the modern media landscape, authenticity and connection can be more valuable than trophies. That a college player with the right story and the right presence can command more corporate attention than a decade-long professional career. That realization is either revolutionary or dangerous, depending on who you ask. If you're a young athlete watching this unfold, you're learning that building your brand might be more important than perfecting your jump shot, that viral moments could matter more than fundamental skills, that the ability to connect with an audience on social media might be more valuable than the ability to play elite defense. If you're a WNBA veteran who took the traditional path, you're watching the rules change in real time, and you're wondering if everything you sacrificed suddenly matters less because the game has shifted underneath you. The ripple effects of Clark's success will define women's sports for the next 20 years. Every female athlete who signs a major endorsement deal will owe something to the path she carved. She didn't wait for permission. She didn't wait for the industry to decide she was ready. She showed up, performed at an extraordinary level on the college stage, and forced the market to adapt to her rather than the other way around. But that doesn't mean her path should become the blueprint for everyone, because not every athlete has her natural camera presence. Not every story resonates the way hers does. Not every player can turn a commercial catchphrase into a cultural movement. If the industry starts prioritizing marketability over skill development, we could end up with a generation of athletes who know how to go viral but struggle with the fundamentals that actually win games. That's the uncomfortable question hanging over everything. Did Caitlin Clark elevate women's sports, Or did she reveal that the business of sports has become more important than the sports themselves? After Nike, State Farm, Wilson, and Gatorade, what's left to conquer? The answer should terrify her competitors and excite her fans. Everything is left. Clark's appeal is broad enough to transcend any single product category. She can sell lifestyle brands, partner with technology companies, work with financial services targeting younger audiences, anchor streaming content and documentary series that turn her story into entertainment beyond basketball. The brands circling her right now aren't just sports companies. Apple is watching, Netflix is watching, Amazon is watching. Major banks, luxury fashion houses, tech startups, media companies, hungry for content that connects with audiences traditional advertising can't reach. They're all studying what State Farm and Nike understood early. Caitlin Clark isn't just an athlete endorsement. She's a cultural bridge to an audience that doesn't respond to conventional marketing. Before she stepped on a single WNBA court, Caitlin Clark had already won the marketing game. She proved that authenticity and connection could be more valuable than professional achievement, that the right story, told the right way, could rewrite decades of industry wisdom. But winning the marketing game and winning on the court are two different things. And the WNBA veterans who watched her arrive with unprecedented corporate power, they're the ones who will ultimately decide whether her commercial genius translates to basketball respect bar or whether she just proved that in modern sports, the business matters more than the game. If you want to see how this story continues, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on, because we're tracking how Clark's commercial dominance is reshaping not just endorsement deals, but the entire power structure of women's professional basketball. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell. The next chapter of this story is going to be explosive, and you don't want to miss what happens when unprecedented success meets unprecedented pressure. This is how one athlete changed everything by refusing to wait her turn. Whether that's genius or disruption depends entirely on which side of the story you're standing on.